This is the LG G2, the new flagship device for 2013, and they did something interesting this year by including the controls on the back of the phone, eliminating the buttons from the sides of the device. Will the super quick Snapdragon 800 processor coupled with this beautiful 1080p display be enough to win your wallet? Let's find out now in the full review of the LG G2. The design of the G2 brings a new element to the smartphone world by eliminating the physical buttons on the sides and placing them on the back, which results in a beautiful slab of rounded plastic that feels great in the hand. Besides the IR blaster and some microphones, you just see rounded edges. And the busiest part lies at the bottom where the speaker, headphone jack, and micro USB ports live, but besides that, you're looking at a sea of rounded edges and clean lines. On the back, you will find that power button, the volume rockers up and down, the new 13 megapixel camera with LED flash, and optical image stabilization. You would think that the odd placement of these buttons would be weird, and it was for the first couple of days. Then I got used to it and it became second nature. The only bad thing is that I guess it depends on how big your hands are. For me, it was the perfect placement, but I can see that some larger hands may have a little trouble with this, and it may become second nature for them to hit the volume up key or the camera itself. So let me know if you've had any troubles with this in the comments below. The power button also acts as a notification light for incoming calls, so I found that to be a nice touch, and you can use it as a camera button for selfies. So if you love taking selfies, you will love this phone. I must say that the star of the show is this beautiful 5.2-inch 1080p display. The pixel density is evident on this display and is brought to the forefront by these super narrow bezels. It looks stunning from the front. The display is a little bit on the cool side, but for the most part, the colors look nice and the display is fairly bright. And everything screams on this G2. And that has to do with the G2 being powered by the Snapdragon 800 processor clocked in at 2.27 GHz with 2 GB of RAM. And of course it does great on these benchmarks and it just burns through them like many of the flagships do with the same processor, but it does translate to real world performance. The Snapdragon 800 is just a beast SoC, it just crushes everything that's out there right now. Now the LG G2 runs Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean, but it runs on top of LG's custom skin. And it does have some interesting features called Slide Aside, which give you a new way to multitask by using 3 fingers to swipe an app into hiding and recall it with the opposite 3-finger swipe. The interface has many customizations, but the one notable one that I like is the ability to switch your software buttons on the bottom. So if you don't like where your back and home buttons are, then you can just change them however you want to. Even though there are some highlights, I found that the LG UI was still a little bit overbearing. And even though you can use these cool things called Q-Slide apps that you can multitask on to run these little mini apps, it just feels a lot like what Samsung is doing. And you can see that these two UIs are very close to each other because they're both Korean companies, and let's say that they borrow from each other. I mean, even from the toggles up top to the app drawer to just kind of how animations are, it just really feels like a TouchWiz device. So if you don't like TouchWiz, then you're probably not going to like the G2 either. Well, this is Android, so you can just put another launcher on top and probably fix a lot of those problems. Now, for the most part, using the G2 was a very pleasurable experience. You know, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and this screen did not disappoint. I loved watching videos on this screen. So whether you're reading Instagram or browsing graphically heavy websites like The Verge, it was just no sweat for the G2. Scrolling was very smooth and the touchscreen was very responsive. The Adreno 330 graphics has no problems pushing all of those pixels around, converting them to a great gaming experience. Even the most graphically intensive games like Dead Trigger 2 played extremely smooth and the frame rates were on point. The only problem is that The menu buttons don't go away from the right side and stay on the screen, and that is really annoying, and it takes up a lot of precious screen real estate that I wish I can have back on the G2. So what do you guys think about that? I just found that to be a major distraction, but the gaming experience overall was great. So a phone is worthless if it doesn't make good phone calls. So what's the phone call quality like? In a nutshell, it's fantastic. I found this phone, like the Optimus G Pro, to have a great earpiece. It was loud, clear, with great tones, and I dropped no phone calls in my area with this AT&T review unit. And the data speeds were consistent on the AT&T 4G LTE network, and the connection was strong, but it will depend on the carrier of your choice, for it's available on all the major US carriers right now. So the last thing we'll look at is the 13 megapixel camera on the back of the LG G2. Many flagships these days have 13 megapixel cameras and even higher, but they don't feature the optical image stabilization like the G2 does. And this translates to less motion blur and cleaner shots and video. The camera interface features a similar borrowed experience from the Galaxy line of phones, including almost the exact same shooting modes. But the nice inclusion is the manual controls that you get all in one menu, so I found that to be very clean. The focus is fast and the shutter is quick, so what are we waiting for? Let's look at some of the sample images coming off the LG G2. For the most part, I think the LG G2 has a fantastic camera, and the only thing I can fault it for is maybe that it's a little bit muted in color, and the replication of detail is a little bit lost when you're in macro mode. But in normal distances, the pictures look fantastic, and you can see there's great color replication, great contrast, and you can see a lot of detail in there, and it just really produced some of the best pictures that I've seen for a 13 megapixel sensor. And some of them are really high contrasted and some of them aren't, so sometimes the processing is a little bit different and it depends on what kind of shot you're going to get. But for the most part, I think you're going to love the way this G2 shoots photographs. So let me just let you take a look at the rest of these, and I'll be back with low light performance. The low light performance though, it could be a little bit better, and I found it to be a little inconsistent as well, where I'm taking the same picture in the same lighting condition and I can get a different shot. And the one thing I noticed a lot is that it really overprocesses in low light, so even though it's creating a brighter picture, you're losing a lot of detail. So the low light performance is not the highlight of this camera. There are a ton of things to like about the G2. It has a gorgeous 1080p display, a new way to interact with your phone with the back buttons, and it has a nice curvature on the phone, so it feels great in the hand. And who can forget about these bezels? I mean, the screen just dominates the front, making it an immersive experience. The battery is sealed in, but the 3000 mAh battery does last a full day, but if you want it to last all day, you may want to dim that screen a little bit. The thing I didn't like about the design is this glossy plastic back. It collects a lot of fingerprints, and I really don't care if it's plastic, but I just wanted it to be a matte finish for that premium feel. And the speaker on the bottom sounded clear, but I wish it was a little louder. That sound just really left me wanting more in my smartphone experience. And there is also no micro SD card expansion, but it does feature 32 gigabytes of internal storage, so some people will be disappointed by that. And finally, I thought that the LG skin was just a little too heavy for my taste, but they may differ for you. Now these are just minor gripes from me, and I thought overall the G2 is the strongest package from LG yet. With its amazing 13 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization to one of the best displays that I've seen this year, and a push in design, I would recommend this phone, but remember one thing, LG's track record for updating Android. Alright, well that's it for me guys, and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this review, and subscribe to my channel for a lot more videos like this, and make sure you follow me on Twitter at SuperScientific and let me know what you think about the LG G2, and I will see you guys in the next video, and thanks for all your support. I will see you soon.